order of business. I'd like to ask everyone to rise and say pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Would the Secretary take the roll call, please?
Yes, Chairperson May.
Here.
Commissioner Steenberg. Here. Commissioner Walls. Here. Commissioner Kalidas is asked to be excused. Commissioner King has asked to be excused. Commissioner Williams. Here. Commissioner Bazzi, we're still waiting, could come. All right? But you do have a quorum with 4 members, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay. Next, we need approval of the agenda. If someone cares to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments or questions on the motion? Should take the roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next we have approval of the minutes from the regular meeting, September 12th, 2024.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's made and supported. Are there any comments, questions, or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
Motion does carry.
Okay, next we have public comment on non-agenda items only. If someone's here that wishes to comment on an item that's not on our agenda tonight, you can step up to the podium now. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to our business item. First item is PPL 24-0025, request for site plan approval to renovate an existing office building at 30210 Ford Road in the Plan Development Zoning District. Okay, Mr. Ortega, you want to start us off?
Yes. Good evening, Chairman May, Commissioners. We're here tonight to consider this proposed modification to an existing building in the city. The site is approximately 85,000 square feet in area and is located on the north side of Ford, east of Henry Ruff. It is the family heating and cooling business site. So the southern portion of this lot, which is adjacent to Ford Road, is actually occupied by a 1-story, 1,971 square foot office building, and then associated parking for the business. And the northern portion, or the rear portion of the lot, is actually a fenced-in storage yard that's occupied by 2 accessory buildings with an outdoor contractor vehicle parking lot. The site was rezoned to plan development and received final site plan approval in May of 2003. So the applicant is proposing to renovate the office building by constructing a 920 square foot first floor addition on the west and south side of the building, as well as then a 2,298 square foot second floor addition for the structure. The office parking lot to the west is going to be modified slightly with a slight reconfiguration along with some landscape improvements. One aspect with regards to plan development is that while it does normally go through the plan development review process, the zoning ordinance does allow for minor changes to plan developments when those changes do not affect the character or the general configuration and uses of the plan that was originally approved. Now, the intent of the original plan development was to allow for a reconfiguration of the established business for outdoor storage of vehicles in the rear or the north of the site. So this proposed addition is occurring on the southern edge of the site, adjacent to Ford Road. So we believe the proposed addition, it's not going to change the use of the site, it's staying the same. It's not going to affect the character because the office will remain in the front, the storage in the rear. And so it's going to keep that same general configuration. So for these reasonings, this proposed modification only requires site plan review and approval by you. With regards to the proposed site plan in front of you, in addition to those, the characteristics of the addition, just noting that actually it's in substantial compliance with other aspects of the zoning ordinance. It meets all dimensional standards of the underlying C2 district. It meets all the parking requirements, even with the addition of the square footage. The parking standards of the zoning ordinance are in compliance. The landscaping that is being proposed is in compliance with all our zoning ordinance standards. They're not touching the trash enclosure, so the existing one is in compliance. So really, the only aspects of this that might impact any changes, that might necessitate any changes, are if the applicant is choosing, based on discussion, to make any modifications. One of the things we note is that part of their construction is going to modify the number of curb cuts. Currently, there's 4 on Ford Road, based on the old configuration of back when it was a fast food restaurant. They are going to be closing one of them directly adjacent to the building, on the west side of the building. That's just for safety reasons, so that way no cars could attempt to try and turn up into the site. So the only thing we noted is that western curb cut is actually also not fully utilized currently. They're choosing not to use it because they have a chain and some curb cuts along that curb stops, the bumper blocks along that curb cut. So if they would like to close off that as well, then that might just take a modification of the site plan that's submitted to you. And that would increase the safety aspect of this site. But it's a little different than the existing, than the proposed closure, because it's not going to be going into a building, it's just going to their current parking lot configuration. So that's one aspect if they wanted to consider that as an improvement at this time. The other is the site plan is not showing any lighting changes. If the applicant would like to have any additional lighting changes, we would just require them to submit a photometric plan just to indicate the location of any new light fixtures. And then also with regards to equipment screening, if at the point in time this new building addition is going to require additional mechanical equipment, we just have to make sure that they meet the screening requirements of the zoning ordinance. So those 3 aspects are based on, once again, if their scope of work expands to cover those things, cover lighting, cover mechanical equipment, or cover an additional closure of a driveway. So with that in mind, we do believe the proposed development is going to renovate an existing dated structure, and it's going to result in a modern office building. The submitted site plan is in substantial compliance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, so we would recommend the Planning Commission grant site plan approval contingent upon any revised necessary plans based on an increased scope of work. So with that, I will take any questions at the appropriate time.
Mr. Steenberg.
The building looks awesome. Every time I look there, I see Long John Silver's with the family heating sign on the front.
I see
That being said, to Mario, do you see any opportunities for some additional landscaping to put a little greenery in that area?
So that is definitely possible. When it comes to our landscaping standard requirements, usually the first 5 to 10 feet of the front property line can have a landscape bed. The parking lot on the east side of the existing building does have that landscape bed there. In theory, if we, to enhance the site, to increase the opportunities for screening of the rear yard, if that 5 to 10 foot landscape bed was continued on the west side of the building into that existing parking lot, that could be one aspect. Technically, because the back is a rear storage yard, the number of parking spaces and the number of, and the size of the parking lots of the official office in the front don't meet our standard for requiring a certain square footage of green space, internal parking lot green space. So that's why I didn't mention it in the review. But the zoning ordinance does give the Planning Commission authority to consider modifications to the landscape standards. So if you wanted to see compliance with that 5 to 10 foot landscape buffer along the Ford Road right-of-way, you could request it, but that's the only real opportunity.
I really don't see that as a good opportunity for what it would do with the site
Right.
going into the lot. What I was wondering, based upon the prints and stuff that we have, do you see an opportunity to put something close to the building? And I know there's minimal space there.
Yeah, that's the thing, it's minimal space, and they are proposing to keep the existing legal non-conforming sign, just for the fact that of the size of it. And so, also by doing their slight modifications on the front facade, it doesn't lend them a lot of opportunity for landscaping in front of the building. And honestly, with the design and style they're proposing, it is going to be a very drastic and dramatic change. So it's kind of the kind of building you wouldn't mind seeing showcased by allowing them to have low-level landscaping and showcase the rest of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Ortega? If not, would the applicant care to come up and make their presentation?
Good evening, everyone. Crystal Palco, Family Heating, 30210 Ford Road, Garden City. So, as most of you know, my family has owned Family Heating and been in Garden City since the early 70s. We were at the corner of Ford and Merriman for many years, above the B&M Party Store and Lion and the Sword restaurant. If you remember those, I grew up in those places as a child. And then in the 80s, accumulating the property along Ford Road, first a couple of houses, then the Party Store, and then finally the Long John Silver's building. For me, myself, I love my city, I love my community a lot. Former school teacher here in Garden City for 29 years. I have 5 students that live on my street, and I get to see quite often, and I actually have 3 students that are current employees. So that's super cool. In our business, which Harold will attest to, we are sitting on top of one another. I myself, as the owner, sit in a utility closet with a sink like a foot away from me, and all the server stuff and all our storage. And my husband, the president, sits at a kitchen table. We choose to do that because we want our people to have the better spaces. And this is a long time coming. I want my people to have a really great place to go to work besides serving our community, right? Like, they've been with us, most of our employees, more than 30 years. And this is going to really make a huge difference for them. It's going to help our business be more efficient and help us serve our customers better. Just there's so much noise in that space, and it's, we deal with it, but it could be better. Also, which I have expressed this to Matt, any meeting that we need to have with more than 4 people, we stand outside. Sometimes we are outside with 60 people, all of our people. There is no place for us to meet. So having a conference room is going to be just a real blessing to us. So these are the purposes. We're not changing the purpose of what we do, but we really want to make our city proud, our community members proud, and the people who work for us to have the best place to work. So that's kind of my presentation, and I'll let Harold.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Harold Rumlinger, Design Team Plus Project Architect for this project. Please to say thank you to Mr. Ortega with the great introduction on this. Covered a lot of the points that I was going to go over. I will touch on a few of those. Yeah, when I first walked into visit with Crystal and Dan and Kurt, kind of thought I'd be smelling some fried fish and some chips in there, but didn't. But looking at the spaces, they have, Kurt actually works in the drive-through window with another person. So that's how tight they're in this space. It's a work environment that's functioning, but it's not promoting healthy work environment. So one of the goals, as Crystal said, is she wants to attract a great employee. She wants to have the employees proud of coming there. With the spaces that we've done on the within inside the building, by giving wellness rooms, having visible staircase to promote exercise, providing an elevator, because a lot of their employees are retired veterans that work part-time. So this allows them to get to meetings in the conference room on the upper floor and everything. So they're going the extra mile. The other thing, we created spaces for collaboration. We have a big conference room, we have a small conference room, we have a cafe that's going in on the second floor adjacent to an outdoor terrace. So again, we wanted to create that healthy atmosphere. Windows with views looking out. Currently, right now, there's hardly any windows looking out on that, around what's there. And then your question, Mr. Steenberg, regarding the landscaping, we did provide foundation landscaping in front of the showroom windows, also on the opposite side of the driveway of the employee parking lot. So we had taken some of that stuff in consideration when we were looking at designing this to meet the standards, as well as to make it beautiful. And that was a conscious decision on us, because we are in a zoning district that we can have 0 lot line setbacks, and we chose not to push it to the sidewalk to the 0 lot line. We wanted to have that buffer, that slight buffer there. The other thing is, we thought it was very important to keep the original family heating and cooling sign, pylon sign that was out there. So the building configuration is dictated by that as well, because we wanted to keep that signage, because it's an iconic sign. People see it, they really know where they're at that point, and we wanted to actually celebrate that. As from a site plan, I did discuss with both Crystal and Dan. They are not opposed of getting rid of that second driveway that you had mentioned, so we will be showing that on our construction documents and permit set of closing off that second driveway and eliminating it. So that is not going to be an issue. Currently, the lighting and the question of lighting, they currently have wall packs on their existing building. There are no pole lights around those parking lots. We're going to continue with that. We will have photometrics on it. We will do full 90-degree cutoff dark sky technology on that, LEDs, so that we're not spilling light on our neighboring properties or out on Ford Road either. So we will handle that. I know there was a question regarding the wall sign on the front of the building where we had showroom listed in there. We're allowed to have 8 square feet. Currently, we're showing 6.5 square feet. Now, in conversation with Crystal and Dan, we may change showroom to parts, service, and what was the other one? Do-it-yourself. Okay. So what their current sign has. So we'll take that space up, but again, that space will be only 8 square feet. We won't exceed for it or have to go in for any variances. A few other things that have dictated the project to, we've considered, let's just, scorch earth, get rid of the building and start from scratch. However, we didn't feel it was necessary to do so. There's a large transformer there. A lot of the power distribution came to this building and went to other areas. So we made the decision to make this a renovation, keeping as much of the exterior walls as possible and then going up from that point. Regarding equipment screening, we're approximately about 24 feet to the roof. We do have about a foot and a half parapet. We feel that placing the units mid-center on that roof will probably be shielded enough from Ford Road from the angle, so we're not concerned about it. However, we'll take a look at that in 3D just to make sure, and if we do need to provide screening, we'll do so as well. So again, that's something that we're going through on our due diligence right now as we go into design development and construction documents. And I think that pretty much covers all the points and questions that we've had that was in the review letter, and I'll open the floor up to any questions that somebody may have.
Yeah, I had one other thing in the lighting. You have currently on your pole sign 2 lights on the top of the sign that are...
Okay.
They're not functional.
They're not functional?
The sign lights up on the inside, so there's some old, I don't know if they're so old, they've never worked since we've been here.
Really, because it was noted that they provided a lot of glare to the traffic on Ford Road.
That might have been just from a story a long time ago, so I apologize if they're not working now, so. Oh, okay.
Okay, Mr. Steenberg?
You said the parapet is about 1.5 feet?
Yes.
And your mechanicals will be 24 foot from the front of the building?
They're going to be about mid-center of the building. So right now, we're going to have 2 units. One of them is going to be towards the rear of the building, probably about 10 or 12 feet off the back of the building, where we have chases going down to the first floor. The other unit will probably be 10 feet away from that, putting it about mid-center on that building.
I'd like you to take a look at that
Yeah.
and do the perspective on it from the sight
Yep.
line of the center line of Ford Road and
Correct.
see if that's going to be sufficient.
Yeah, no, that, we will
Because
do
the
that,
building's
yeah.
too beautiful to see some mechanical sticking up as you're driving by.
Yeah, no, we will take a look at that, and we're right now developing it in Revit, so it's 3D right now, so it's easy enough to do a sight line and actually take a look at what we're seeing.
And the other thing, it sounded like the balcony was tentative at this point. Is that going to be part of all these renovations now?
Currently, it's an add-alt feature, so we're setting up that front area that if they want to add in the balcony and the pavers in that area to actually go out on that, it will be set up to do that, so we'll have enough step down for the drainage and everything, so they could come in and add that in at a later date if they can't fit it into the budget currently.
Because that seems like it'd be an awesome thing to be able to step out there and get some fresh air.
Have lunch on the terrace?
Yeah.
We can actually have meetings outside in a proper space.
Yeah.
Consider the portion.
That's all for me.
Mr. Williams?
I'm good.
You good?
Okay.
You good? Okay. Well, I think you've addressed most of the issues that we had. I would be in favor of granting approval conditional or contingent on those items being taken care of. First, removal of the secondary unused driveway approach, the photometric plan for the lighting, and checking on the screening for the for visibility from the street. And along with that, I believe that we also noted in our review that the sidewalk should be reviewed by the city's engineers after the construction is done to make it safe, basically.
Yeah, I think from doing the walkthrough with our mechanical engineer, we're going to increase the water line coming in possibly if it's undersized, which means we're going
So
to
they're
be getting
going
into
to
that
probably have
sidewalk
to
and
dig up
doing-
part of it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're still in the midst of doing the engineering on that, so we'll have that determination.
Okay. And along with that, of course, we would make a contingent on approval of our city engineer and fire marshal.
Yep.
Which would be normal.
Yep.
So if someone cares to make a motion contingent on those items? Mr. Tabor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve contingent upon the items as noted.
Support? Any comments? Questions? Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Congratulations. Your
Thank you very
site plan
much.
is approved, contingent on those items, and you continue to work with Mr. Ortega to get that straightened out.
Will do. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And good luck with your project.
When will you break ground and when do you expect completion?
So as soon as we can, it depends on the weather, right? So, you're not gonna like this, but I'm hoping for a freezing cold winter. For business sake. But this was last year, we could have done construction during the winter, it was so mild, so it will depend on the weather. But as soon as possible, we do not intend on having to secure any loans or anything of that nature, so we all depend on the ability of construction. I do want to say thank you. I hope you can feel my passion for our community, and I want nothing but the same things that you guys want. I want a beautiful city with beautiful buildings, and all of our people to be served well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate
Thank you.
putting that kind of effort and money into your building here. Thanks again.
It's our headquarters, it's important.
It's going to be a beautiful addition, and I think your neighbor to the west is going to be making some significant improvements to his property very shortly.
It'll be great for the city altogether,
Yeah,
right?
be real nice.
Well, thanks again.
Congratulations and good luck. Yeah, with with the car center on the corner there, you know.
Yeah,
You know, boy, it's really gonna develop there.
it'll look great, yeah.
Man, thank you guys for being, to listen, you know? We've got properties in other cities and it's like pulling teeth to do anything.
Well, I'm glad we can help you. We appreciate your work here.
Right. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Okay, moving on to our other business item. We have Housing Readiness Grant Master Plan Amendment Kickoff. This is a presentation of the scope of the work for the master plan amendment to addressing housing readiness and including goal-setting exercises. Mr. Ortega.
Yes. So, good evening. This is a culmination or one of the next steps in our effort to address some of the concerns the Planning Commission brought up several months ago and resulted in first having our joint meeting with the DDA and the council, trying to see about ways to address the various issues with development in the city. And so the development director was working with McKenna. We applied for and the city received a grant from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MSHDA, a $50,000 grant to do a master plan amendment. As you know, we did our 5-year review. We found some of the things wanting in the existing plan, mainly the age of the data, but also we did talk about how some of the ideas to address housing in the plan currently just didn't seem to reflect the current needs and the current ideas of the residents. So this is the beginning of that effort to kick off and review and do an amendment that will address this issue. With me tonight is Emily Human. She's with McKenna and she's helping out on this project, and she's going to be with us throughout the project to go over this analysis and then make the revision. Because the intent of this is to do a master plan amendment. And so I'm going to be referencing the memo in front of you, but then also this presentation in the handouts. So this MSHDA grant is intended to better address the overall needs of housing in the city by looking at ways we can increase the variety. In a minute here, we're going to be talking about the type of housing that we currently have in the city. Looking at about expanding affordability. A lot of times that talks about referencing the first aspect, increasing more variety of housing types, but there might be other ways that we can look at expanding affordability. And then one of the key aspects that we're going to look to the Planning Commission as residents and as longstanding related to this issue is looking at redevelopment opportunities within the city. You know, McKenna, we're going to be looking at this from our outside perspective, but not only looking at the Planning Commission, we're going to have, eventually we'll point out some of the public opportunities for them to also provide us with guidance as to where in the city would be appropriate for this type of providing options for new housing. And basically, in the end, we're going to develop both policies that will address housing needs, but then also have a more actionable segment in which we're going to be crafting zoning reform recommendations. So the items that you guys deal with every month when it comes to these reviews and approvals, we're going to be looking at ways to change the zoning ordinance to allow for housing variety and housing affordability that is appropriate for the city, that reflects what the city wants to have, reflects what the city residents are comfortable with, but also allowing for those new options within the city. So the next page goes over the timeline. It's going to be very expedited timeline because we want to make sure to get these on the books, these proposed changes. So this is a master plan amendment. So this will require notification of going through all the requirements of the state law. We're going to notify the adjacent communities, and then at the end of the process, there's a review period. So while this is a 9-month process, those are built in. So a lot of the key work is going to happen in the middle. Tonight, as our Planning Commission kickoff, October 15th, we're going to have the similar kickoff with the DDA members so we can gather their input. And this is going to be leading to an event on November 14th. It's going to be a design charrette here at City Hall. We're going to be looking at this housing topic specifically with regards to not only presenting to those in attendance a brief analysis of where the city is right now with its housing types and its housing options, but also identifying some initial locations. The number one and seemingly obvious one would be the Kmart site, looking at what housing options that could possibly be. But then also we'll get into a little bit here other opportunities. And at the design charrette, we're going to be looking at the various types of housing units that could be options for the city. You know, in the past, when we were talking about some of our site plans and some of our options, I've mentioned, and you guys have also talked about, like things like townhouses that exist in Dearborn, like on the west side of Dearborn behind Michigan Ave right there, and Michigan Avenue and Miller. You know, there actually are some other townhouses over in Westland on off Parkway. Those options. Not only that, but then also other things that we'll get into and Emily get into in a moment with regards to, you know, senior housing options like empty nester types. Housing development. Looking at how the townhomes that are on Pardo that were eventually approved, you know, how are they going to be considered as, is that a good enough option? Do we want different opportunities for that housing type? And even talking about, the charrette is to have a wide open opportunity to talk about the different options, we'll present them to you, and you will identify for us which ones are priority, which are the ones that would be acceptable, and which are the ones that would fit in Garden City. There are ways you can design a duplex or even a triplex, or even the idea of what they call a quadplex. It looks like a single-family home from the street. And so we'll be able to present that and see if that's something that's feasible or if it's not. So that's what this design charrette is going to do. Once the design charrette, we're going to gather that public input, and we're going to quickly develop the master plan amendment. We're going to develop the goals out of that charrette, and we're going to develop also our recommendations for zoning reform to allow for this. And that's going to happen at the December 12th Planning Commission meeting. So it's a quick exercise, but it's going to be something that's going to be very important to develop something that we think can develop opportunities that are acceptable to the city. So as I mentioned, the next page just goes over the design charrette. We're going to explore those new housing options, different housing types, and then we're also going to focus on redevelopment sites. I mentioned the Kmart site. One other option possibly we might look at is the northeast corner of Middlebelt and John Hawk. I think that was a library, right, back in the day?
Yep.
So like it's been vacant for a little while. You've got that property that's fronts on Middlebelt and then the vacant lot behind it. You know, what are the options that could possibly fit there? You know, the differences of that site because it's closer to single-family homes compared to the Kmart site. While the Kmart site is adjacent to the houses on Beechwood, you know, also maybe talking about the houses on Beechwood, because right now in the master plan, they're considered an extension of the downtown. Do we want to consider that still as a possibility, as eventually extending downtown north of Beechwood? Or do we want to change that alternative, maybe to look at like different housing options? So those are the different, those two initial sites. But you will, you know, right now, and feel free, I'm talking too much already, when you guys feel like if there's other sites in the city that we can focus on as well to talk about.
Well, there's a couple of other large sites that I can think of. The old Berger School site
Yeah.
is one. I believe there's a pretty big parcel down at Marquette and Vinoy.
Yeah,
John Santu has a pretty big chunk of land there.
that's very true. Yeah, it's pretty big.
So, I mean, there are several large parcels that could be considered for different types of development in that respect.
So those will be good to identify. We'll begin including that as our analysis. But then I think one other aspect too will be when we're talking about those particular sites, also the characteristics of those sites and what type of development would be acceptable. Like the Santu site, while is it right on Inkster Road, you know, there's not a lot of commercial development right now on Inkster, and a lot of it is adjacent to existing single-family homes. So like what type of housing types would be acceptable there adjacent to single-family homes versus over here on at the Kmart site in the downtown? Like how would that be different? You know, I could see higher buildings with more units possible, since we already have, you know, the high-rise right here, the senior housing, versus probably that might not be the same. You probably don't want to put a 5 or 6-story building over at Marquette and Inkster, so,
Yeah,
so that kind of thing.
it would have to be area appropriate.
Exactly, that's a great way to describe it, as area appropriate would be important. So the next part of the presentation, yeah, absolutely.
I thought we were going to look at the northeast quadrant also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. The northeast quadrant as well is going to be a very good opportunity for that, because we've talked about the park there, but you're right, that'd be another opportunity for housing.
And then the other site that I kind of think about often is behind Douglas Elementary.
Oh, right.
yeah,
That's
correct.
a large piece
It's a
of
large
land.
parcel. It's owned by Garden City Hospital currently.
Yeah, I assume they're still using the school. But,
But they're, you know, they're making big renovations at the hospital, renovating the basement, and those are offices. So, you know, are they going to accommodate more people working back on site? Will this become a vacant old elementary school to us or not? You know, those are things
well,
that we
if we
should look
presented
at.
them with options, maybe they
Correct.
would consider it more.
Correct.
Yeah.
So those are of large note, I think, because we don't have a lot of land left.
Right.
So that would be, I think, a good spot to think about also.
The large parcel at Manor Park backs up to Manor Park, the radio towers.
Yeah, the radio
Yeah.
tower, yes.
They're barely ever cut.
Correct, they don't want, yes.
Yep.
But they are in use, is what we're told. I mean, it's a strange
I haven't seen anybody
situation.
in that building
I
in
know.
10 years.
I know.
Yep.
So, okay.
So in addition, so to begin the analysis, the next slides have some different characteristics for your existing housing type that Emily's going to go over.
So the first slide, we're going to talk a bit about housing supply, what currently exists here in Garden City. So this data is from 2022 from the Census's American Community Survey. And in 2022, Garden City had just over 11,000 units. And between 2022 and 2010, the amount of housing units in the city has only increased by about 460 units. So in that time frame, you haven't seen a ton of growth in the housing stock. But what currently exists is there's a large proportion of single-family homes, about 90% single-unit homes in the city. And in comparison with Wayne County as a whole, and just Wayne County excluding the city of Detroit, there's a lot less housing diversity in Garden City than in neighboring communities. And that goes for the southeastern Michigan region as a whole. So as you can see in that slide, there's a lot less housing diversity in Garden City in comparison to neighboring communities, and therefore just less options that people might, you know,
Yeah,
be
and
able
I
to
think that's
consider.
kind of a function of the size of the city, too. We're kind of limited with our boundaries. And since the city is pretty much built out now.
Yeah, so figuring out, you know, if there's opportunities in the city to diversify the mix of housing a bit more and what that looks like and what's appropriate in the city moving forward. So looking at housing tenure, so, you know, ownership versus rentals. Similarly, Garden City has a higher percentage of owner-occupied units in comparison to surrounding communities. So it's, in Garden City, it's about an 80-20 mix of 80% homeowners and 20% renters currently, and very few vacancies in comparison to surrounding areas. So what I take from that is that there's sometimes limited options if you're a renter to move forward with home ownership if you'd like, because so many people are currently staying in their owner-occupied homes and there's little vacancy. But there's also little opportunity if I wanted to move into the city to rent something while I'm getting to know the city and getting to know the community. So there's, you know, there may be opportunities to look at that and see if there's opportunities for more rental housing and what that looks like.
Question.
Yes.
Is your information here from SEMCOG?
This is, this I believe is from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey. So they send that out and update it annually.
Okay.
And the next map, so you can see this is the types of housing that are currently existing as of 2020. So as you can see in this map, there's a large proportion of single-family homes, and then kind of attached condos and multifamily housing is largely limited, to around Ford Road and some other limited areas. So there may be opportunities to see how other areas of the city can take on additional housing diversity if that's an option, and seeing what types of housing might be appropriate. So next we're going to get into where different types of housing can be built in Garden City today, as what's allowed in the zoning ordinance. So and I've passed out zoning maps as well, so you can kind of follow along there too to see on the zoning map what's allowed. But 85.6% of the total land area is, you can build single-family dwelling units in Garden City, obviously if there's a piece of land available. So single unit dwellings are allowed by right in the zoning ordinance, and much of the community is zoned R1, which would allow for that single-family housing. So next we're going to get into duplexes, where duplexes can currently be built in the city. And this is just where they can be built. That doesn't mean that they're actually existing in these places, but this is where the zoning ordinance would allow for them to be built. So as you can see, only 2.8% of the land area in Garden City, you're allowed to build a duplex. Then if you go to the next slide for multiple units, it's even less, although just slightly. So 2.4% of the total land area in Garden City, you can build an apartment building. So as you can see, that's concentrated largely along Ford Road, but there's additional pockets in the city where those types of units are allowed to be built. So next, getting into second-story residential. A lot of downtown areas throughout the state and country are allowing more second-floor residential above commercial as an opportunity to invigorate their downtown areas and provide additional housing opportunities. So currently in Garden City, 2.5% of the land area is allowed to be built with second-floor residential or live-work units, and that's concentrated in the downtown area and elsewhere along Ford Road.
Yeah, we recently approved that area along Ford Road for mixed-use housing, but I don't think we've had any takers, really. So
We've had a couple people actually come in and talk about it, but they haven't advanced yet to that point of a site plan stage.
yeah, the people that built the townhouses over on Pardo
They
were
were-
talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple other people come in and ask about it, but yeah, there's talk. There's not yet to the point of site plan.
Okay.
Initially, he talked about 12 condos on that site, 276 foot of frontage, 6 facing Ford Road and 6 facing to the south, if he were to acquire it.
And lastly, just getting into senior housing, so 5.1% of the total land area is allowed, you can build senior housing. And I understand in the zoning ordinance, there's an ability in commercial areas to add some of that senior housing. So as you can see kind of through these different maps, while there's a lot of places that single-family units can be built in the city, there's not as much opportunity for other types of housing. And so determining as a community, if additional housing types, where those would be appropriate, if they're appropriate, and figuring out, what types are most appropriate for the city moving forward as part of the purpose of this housing amendment, and seeing if there's opportunities, for folks who, want to live in the community long-term, move into the community and stay here and raise their families here, is there ample opportunity for them to do that with the lack of diversity in the housing types and just the general low vacancy rates and being able to actually secure a place to live in Garden City? So
In order to qualify for senior housing, does that have to include some kind of federal funding, or no? There doesn't have to be any special subsidies for that?
Nope.
It's an arbitrary age, and prior to the units on Middlebelt there, we had an age of, I believe, 55, 62, and something else. I believe it's been codified to 55 now.
That's right.
On those units. And I think that's one of the things that's sorely missing in this city. You either live in an apartment or you live in a house. You own a house, you rent an apartment, and at a certain point, there's a portion of the population that doesn't want either. They want a place to live that they own, that they don't have to cut grass and shovel snow and rake leaves and all the rest of the stuff, plus all the equipment that you need to maintain a house.
Yeah, well,
And they want to be able
That
to,
means condominiums, and
Right.
I think it's high time we look very, very seriously at a major block of condominiums, and that Kmart site looks real prime to me. I
yeah,
could
that would
envision
be
that-
ideal for townhouses.
Yeah, I could envision that being a ring around the periphery, we're what, 7.2 acres there?
yep,
Yeah, I could envision that with that central driveway like we talked about with LA Fitness. And then right down the middle, there would be some retail that wouldn't front Ford Road.
right.
It would be in the middle. And have that skirted by townhouse condominiums, 2 stories, all the way around the side, coming up to, but not to Ford Road. And then leaving 2 outlots, which we originally had, that could be retail facing Ford Road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wouldn't be hidden, but it wouldn't be front and center on Ford Road. And I think there's a portion of the population that'd find that very inviting, because I know for a fact at least 3 different couples that have moved out of Garden City because there was no opportunity, and they just didn't want to fool with the house anymore. They travel. You have to get somebody to maintain your house if you leave for any length of time. And so the 2 went to Dearborn in those townhouses, and 1 went to Westland.
Yeah, and that would certainly support the businesses in the downtown area.
Yeah, yeah. And it would lend itself to a study, the Hyatt La Palma study from 1 million years ago, that we paid just shy of $250,000 for, and we've done very little to implement. And that was about how to make Garden City walkable. Now, when you can make a city like Ferndale, that's primarily situated on Woodward Avenue, when you can make that a walkable city, you can make any city walkable.
Yeah, but they made 9 Mile walkable there.
Yeah, they did a whole bunch of stuff, but I mean...
That's a little different than Ford Road, I think.
Yeah, it is.
But I think that's the key lesson of it, is that like when you do have some kind of major corridor where you're worried about letting people cross it, you do have to have that secondary street come off it as a spur. And so, Mike, I think you're saying when it comes to, is Middlebelt that spur? Is it creating a new street through the Kmart site for that as a spur? I mean, those are the different opportunities that I think we've always talked about, and I think it's now, and this plan will give us the good opportunity to update what we'd like to see happen based on current standards. Because, Mike, you're right, when it comes to these options, people that want to stay in Garden City, they can't. Sure, it might seem like, oh, it's not that bad if they just have to move to Dearborn or Westland, but if that's an extra 10-minute drive or 15-minute drive, or you have to stay on Ford Road that much longer, do you really want to do that? Or you just want to take, you want to just go down Merriman or just go down Vinoy as a casual trip to get to the church or get to the event you want to go to without having to leave the city? So these are all good discussions, because the next aspect with regards to the presentation is just, we included in the next slide, the existing goal of in the master plan that talks about housing. So in that, right now, the master plan talks about, yes.
I had one question, or maybe something to add. When I was looking at the renter-occupied data that we have, that's based on, single-family and multifamily merged. So it's not a split, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's how they denote on their census that they don't know where they live. But it's skewed a little bit, because if you look at it's about 18% roughly of our housing stock, but a majority of it is really in places that were built for multifamily, for rental, to rent. And we do have single-family rentals. We do have a number of them in the city, but we're not overwhelmed with them. So I think if somebody sees this 18%, like, oh, there's rental house on my block or whatever, you do have to remember that it is a merged number of single-family and multifamily, just so you know, because we really are not. I worked in another city that it was, there was one owner and 8 rentals on a block, single family.
Yeah.
And it was quite challenging after the housing drop, and it changed the way the neighborhoods felt and the value, so.
And one other aspect is the ancillary to that note is that when it comes to, the preconceived notions, honestly, of rental housing, and the idea that there might have some kind of substandard improvements, the city has done a long, hard effort in the past several years to do rental inspections. So our current policy within the building department is to require that every rental house, so like Matt said, it's not just apartments, it's single-family homes that are rented, they're inspected every year. And so whereas
Every third year.
Then when they pass that, then they can get to the 3 years.
Okay, yes.
To the 3-year standard. So, excuse me, it's a
That's
3 year. So, but it's more frequently than the owner-occupied homes that, if someone's in there, and like we just said, it's a long tenure, what are the conditions of those homes when they actually come up for sale? So there's a lot more investment that's necessary to bring them up to a modern standard. So yeah, the 3-year review of the rentals is one way in which we can ensure that that rental stock meets the modern standards at the time. But as I was mentioning with regards to this, the last thing tonight with this presentation is looking at our existing master plan goal, which is about maintaining the viability of housing in strong neighborhoods, promote alternative housing types, such as attached single-family condos and senior housing units. So Mike, you were mentioning those are kind of, things that are missing. The master plan spoke to them, but maybe it needs to be emphasized more. If that's where we want to go, maybe that's the type of housing type we want. We need to find better ways to, identify sites for that, maybe get into the details of what kind of, what are we talking about in terms of minimum lot sizes, density, setbacks, that sort of thing.
I think we need to be very cautious with senior housing. And I say that because of the units on Middle Belt there, behind the Kmart.
Oh, right.
The first batch of those units sold relatively fast. And they seemed to be priced right for the market at that particular time. And then the last third of those units took forever. We made them senior housing, not taking into consideration that Ford Road and Middle Belt is the busiest intersection on 153 to date, and that with all the new stuff at Metro Airport, all employees must park off of Middle Belt. Nobody parks off of Merriman anywhere as an employee, or they can be disciplined. So you have pilots, co-pilots, fuel people, flight attendants, all those people working at Metro Airport. And we have several members of the family that work in the aviation industry, and they have houses or apartments in other cities where they make the end of their route at frequently. And by making those senior, I think had we not done that, those would have been gone in a split second. And, I mean, caveat emptor, I believe, applies here. I remember it got brought up, well, we have to make them senior because a family can't move in there, there's no backyard. I have 5 kids. I wouldn't even dream of buying one of those. The backyard is the size of this sheet of paper and the front yard's not much bigger. And it's basically a 1-bedroom with a small den. It's not designed to be a family layout type house. They were designed specifically for somebody that doesn't need a lot of space, maybe a young couple that wants some ownership, and eventually they'll have a family and buy a house and have something bigger. But we took all those opportunities away by making it a senior.
Yep.
And I think we shot ourselves in the foot there, and I don't want to see us do it again. So when I see the word senior housing, it scares me for that reason.
No, that's a very good point. And so, and I think a key way to start that conversation and make sure we don't lose it as we go through there is this next aspect of the presentation is looking at the goals. Like, what are our real goals for this housing initiative? So in the presentation, we have the master plans one right now. Then we've also started as a basis, there's 13 different goals listed here that MISTA has developed for what they think they see as broad-based standard. That's in the memo. It's not in this. It's in the memo, and that was in your packet. So there's 13 different aspects of it. A lot of them are kind of more broad-based. Some of them we already deal with, like for example, making sure the rental quality remains high through our inspection program. But I think what we'd like for you to do, and we can discuss it now, or you can do it as homework, is what other goals you want to see this effort accomplish with regards to housing options and updating the master plan. I think that's key, Mike, that you mentioned, that make sure that the housing plan identifies different housing types for people in different stages of life and also different jobs, and so that when making sure that's not pigeonholing us with just a certain housing type is only for seniors and that's the only kind that we allow in the city. But also look at other ways that the goals can be adjusted to reflect what you'd like to see. Obviously we're going to be focusing on the downtown. So what kind of development you would like to see in housing type C in the downtown, and that can be crafted and morphed into a goal, a sentence goal. Like you mentioned, the townhouses, the townhouse options in the downtown, that could be something.
Prior to our charrette or our working with the DDA, myself, I'd like to see a comprehensive list of the vacant properties in Garden City, what their approximate acreage is, and what they're currently zoned. Because I think that would be a good starting point, starting looking at the biggest and then working our way down. I know there's a host of miscellaneous single-family R1 type properties scattered throughout the city, but there's like Lathers, there's Ford Road in Merriman area there. There's quite a few when you actually start going through the city, because I drive through periodically and just go up and down streets that I haven't traveled for a while to see what it looks like and to see what's there. But to have a comprehensive list, I think, would be a good starting point. How much land are we talking about? Is it only the Kmart site? I think there's quite a few besides that.
Yeah, we can include that as part of our analysis and the presentation at the charrette to know what those opportunities are. Because one other key aspect, I think, then to just keep in mind is, all right, if we look at the vacant sites, what are they zoned now? Maybe that gives the opportunity of, right, do we change the zoning?
Right.
So I don't know, though, in terms of changing something from a commercial to a multifamily, how that could or couldn't work. Sometimes that's a possibility. A lot of times it's actually more about maybe looking at opportunities to expand our mixed use overlay. We started in the 2 blocks right there on Ford Road. Maybe that's another option to consider in these other sites, like like right there at Merriman and Ford. I mean, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But other aspect too, with regards to that is, when you look at, what do you do when the vacant land is gone? A lot of communities then look at redevelopment of existing developed land. Like what options, if any, so would be for looking at sites that have been developed, maybe they aren't at the density, or maybe there's locations that we could look at for redevelopment or allowing for other housing types there to accommodate these people that like you said, young people that can't move into town, or if they're renters, they're ready to buy something, or they're for themselves. You know, not everyone's getting married when they're 21 anymore. So there's people that stay single longer. So where do they go? You know, when, you know, a lot of aspect we noticed, and throughout Michigan, is the idea that, you know, a lot of the children, when they go off to college, but then they don't move back home. They won't move back, well, they do move back home sometimes, just back into the house. They do that. But then when they're ready for when they finally got their sea legs, and when they're ready to get that job and move somewhere, they end up moving out of state. There's a 10% drop in the amount of college-age children here, and a lot of times you can see that by the amount of people that have to go visit their grandsons and granddaughters out of state, because they don't live here. They go to Chicago, they go to Nashville, and they go other places. So what other options, if any, would the city like to create to allow for those people to stay? So that way your grandchildren are 10 minutes away and not a 10-hour flight away. Well, not 10 hours, I'm sorry, a couple hours. But those are just aspects, like, should the master plan amendment consider that? Like, with regards to goals, what do you want to see the master plan achieve with this effort? So that would be your homework. See if you can come up with a goal or two. Like, what do you want to see this actually accomplish for the city with regards to housing?
And that can come at the charrette, correct? Yes. So
Yes, we'd be looking for you.
Yeah, we did schedule a charrette before the November Planning Commission, beginning at 4 o'clock. It'll be open to the public. So we kind of did it so that it'd be convenient. You already have some time set aside, but maybe come early before the Planning Commission in November to see what we are working on. Also, part of this is that, you know, the statewide housing, you know, crisis, you know, the MSHA says it's a crisis. I don't know necessarily, but there is missing housing throughout the state. And as the population changes, you know, how do we address attracting, not everybody wants to buy a house and have a yard. The generations are changing, and the need for that is a little less than, you know, my era. The other thing I don't know if we talked about or not is about first floor residential in the downtown. And to look at that also is, you know, we don't want to exclude something if it has first floor residential in the downtown, and we need to make sure of that. And then in regards to senior housing, what we don't really address is accessory dwelling units, how to have like a granny or grandpa cottage in the back of the yard or something like that, and how that could be accommodated through our zoning ordinance and changes to the master plan and zoning ordinance. If you have that, you know, first of all, say somebody wants to do that. It's a large investment. Sewer line, water line, you know, electricity back to the back. It's a big investment, but it might be a worthy investment. It will increase the value. It'll increase the density, but it allows for senior housing, but on, you know, not their own unit, but maybe something like that. So there's some ideas I thought about as we were.
If we allow that type of housing to be built on an existing lot behind the one house,
Mm-hmm.
would that be open to just general rental?
It could be. I
Or-
don't know.
Or would that be desirable? Or do we want to limit it to family members?
Yeah, I don't know if we can we deed restrict? We can't deed
be pretty
restrict
tough.
that.
How can
Yeah,
we limit it at all?
Yeah. I don't think we can, but if we write the ordinance to where they have to invest enough, it would be an asset, not a negative, no matter who lives there, maybe.
Yeah.
The way we limit it is we don't have it a separate building. We have an addition to the existing house. We work with the percentage of built on versus the lot size. That would be one way to limit it. And you're either renting the whole house or you're using part of it for an extended family.
So those are things. And then the other item that I know when we're to that point about the zoning ordinance, we need to look at what is by right and what is not, so that time is money to anybody building anything, and less approvals and more administrative approvals are easier and does promote development. And we do get tripped up sometimes by developers saying that. And if the ordinance addresses it and it is allowed by right, we should, look at that and allow for more permissions.
So one thing I'll leave you with regards to that is that, so in the zoning ordinance, we already allow accessory apartment dwellings.
Yeah.
With the accessory apartment dwellings are in section 154.157, and they're permitted as a special land use in the single-family district. So now that's one aspect with regards to it, is it probably had discussions. It looks like this was adopted, allowed back in 1992 when they last did the whole zoning ordinance. So it's been sitting there, and I've never seen it accomplished. We've never crossed that unit, so it's never been done on a site. But I get the feeling, number one, it's requiring it, you're only allowing one per unit. It's a maximum square foot not to exceed 600 square feet, and it requires a special land use approval. If the granny flat or was something you consider, then that next level of analysis and what the master plan, this amendment is going to look at is what processes are going to allow it. Because obviously they thought about it, but the amount of levels of approval and the requirements just negated it. So it never have an opportunity to come about. So that's a discussion to have.
Is that going to make a significant volume in our housing? Yeah.
Well, that's
something that we should concentrate on, things that are going to have the biggest impact, I think.
That's one aspect to consider, like how impact, but also once again, the reason I think this never occurred, because it required special land use approval. So if someone hears that just to put an apartment in, they got to go through special land use, they just didn't bother. And so while there's the other aspects of it to consider, like you guys have been already talking about, I think that's another key aspect to this is like, look at the housing types, what's we're comfortable with, and then look at the approval process and see what would allow it, at least at a minimum allow it, or in possibility encourage it, because the regulations of it, as Matt just said, the review and approval process, if you put in too many, might not seem like barriers, but in effect they might become barriers. So that's something we'll have to talk about. Like how do we make it work? Because that's the key of this. The master plan has come up with the idea. How do we make it work in the real world? And that's what this amendment is going to do. Changes to the zoning ordinance will allow.
How would you differentiate between the two? If somebody wanted to put an apartment above their garage and rent it out.
Right.
So you'd have 100% homestead, but then you'd have a rental on the property?
It does reduce the homestead amount. So it would be probably 50%. They often do that. 100% homestead, 50% homestead. I don't know if they have a 75% homestead based on square footage. I'm not sure.
Right. But that's a good point, because that could be something to talk about when, like, someone might think at first, oh, this will be a revenue stream, I'm going to do this. But then it's going to impact their taxes. So they have to understand that. So, that aspect alone might deter people from doing this as a rental, but that also maybe if we change the approval process, they might want to create one so they could have their parents take care of. I wish I had the opportunity to have something like that, and I'm at the age now where my friends' parents are all deciding, can they stay in their home? Do they go to a assisted living? Or do they have another option, staying close to home, not in the same, another option. But that's just another aspect to consider. Once again, it's about you informing us at the charrette what your goals are for that. That's what we'll be looking at next time. You telling us the goals that we can, and then we provide you the tools to achieve those goals. And that'll be what we'll talk about next time.
But we also just need to, we need to think outside the box at some level. We're very traditional, and I don't think it will hurt to, during this process, to think outside the box a little. We need to increase the number of people living here if we want to help the commercial core at all. So I just think that's something we need to think about to help us look at what vacancy rate of the commercial can we help improve? Because on top of people not wanting to buy houses and have yards, people aren't shopping either at stores. So there's just this, it's changing so drastically how planning, we had an ordinance amendment in 1992, that's 32 years ago, and nobody's done it yet. So obviously it's telling us something. It wouldn't work, because then the neighbors, we have to send the notice, the neighbors will recommend denial, or the planning commission would recommend denial, or the council would, because it's something a little different than what we're used to seeing. So, but those things are, I guess, put on your thinking caps, but also put on your thinking outside the box caps too. That's my request.
What's our current population?
27,000 roughly.
27,000?
8?
Something like that,
about
yeah.
there, yeah.
And it's predicted to drop to what by the next census?
I don't know. It is going down.
Unfortunately, it's not projected to grow. The next census, we're not going to.
Right.
At this level of, we got 6 more years left. Only if there was this kind of change, like we've seen the housing types, we've seen what it is. Only if this changed and the amount of density increased would we see more. And it's a matter of where to put it, because that's why, downtown seems like the good option. But the master plan is the idea, just opportunity to talk about it. I don't think anybody should feel bad about talking about the different options, because nothing's written in stone. So it doesn't hurt to talk about it and see what it is, because then you lay out all your different options on that spectrum. And then the community chooses, what are we comfortable with? Knowing that, we've been sticking with this for a while, and where are we headed if we keep down the same road?
I think if we want to stabilize that population and/or increase it, we have to look at multifamily, both rental and ownership in the form of townhouses and apartments. And I think we could be more reasonably priced than possibly Dearborn, Livonia, Dearborn Heights, or even Westland, or at least on a par, because I don't know what the number of units of apartments are in Westland, but it must be great, because when you drive through Westland, they're everywhere. And a lot of big apartments. When you go up and down Newburgh, boy, just vast swaths of apartments.
Yeah, they have some big complexes.
Way deep in there.
Yeah. No, the only dent we're going to make in anything is with multifamily, I believe.
Yeah.
Putting in a single family here and there isn't going to make much difference,
No.
I don't think.
That's going to be for the small developer to come in, and we see evidence of that all the time.
Yeah.
Onesie, twosie here
That'll
and
go
there.
on.
Yeah, and that'll go on until
Well, there's no
there's
place
no
to
more,
put them,
because
right.
there's a lot of people, well,
But we need to identify all the places where multifamily is feasible.
I think that's the number one.
And we might have to adjust the heights and stuff we let them build at. The construction cost now, a 2-story complex isn't feasible. With what they want for land and the construction
ran into
materials
that.
alone,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to increase the heights on some of these buildings.
We ran into that over on Merriman with the existing apartments that are only allowed 2.5
Right.
stories, so they put half underground.
Yeah.
What is our current, 34.6
The height,
height?
2.5 stories are 35 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, 35 even. And what would it be if we raised it to 3, and then would the fire department be able to accommodate that?
Well,
We can accommodate, well, Fred knows probably better than I, but at least we have the 10-story, we have the senior housing, so there's some, at a minimum, is it cross-sharing of facilities with other
we
districts?
have aerial equipment now that we didn't have in the past when
Okay.
we looked at that, so that, and we do have automatic aid plans that bring in the surrounding communities whenever we have a fire of any kind.
Would
That's
we
a
want to look at possibly increasing the height to accommodate
That-
3- and 4-story
Well,
apartment
we might want to
building?
go up a little bit.
That would certainly
I don't know if we
increase
wanna
the
go up that high.
density.
I know Westland has some pretty tall townhouses. I don't know what their limits are.
What would 3 stories be for height?
It all depends, I
For
mean,
a story?
Probably 45 then, right?
yeah, 45,
Like 45, right?
Yeah, 45 to 50 feet.
yeah.
You'd be
But then when you
increasing it by
raise
about
the-
15 feet.
Okay.
When you raise the height, though, we have to reduce the setback also, is another thing we need to look at. So the higher up it goes, the more setback is required,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
No, not right
No,
now.
okay, sorry.
It's the,
That's
but
vague.
I think what you're talking about is the higher up you go, there's a higher setback between buildings.
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
between the
Yes.
buildings, they have to get more.
More separation.
Separation, yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, separation,
Yeah.
not setback.
Is that for fire
For fire
protection?
safety, yeah.
Yeah. So
So there's some aspect of that we just have to make sure we maintain the safety of all the facilities.
We could look at improving the fire separation in multifamily buildings too.
Yeah,
Because right now, rental units don't have a whole lot of fire separation, especially in the attic spaces.
yeah,
But when they're building condos, like the ones over on Pardo, because they're not rental, they had to provide better fire separation in those units.
yeah.
So maybe we should think of a local ordinance to require that. That would reduce the impact if there was a fire, on the impact on the fire department, and improve the safety of the residents. It's,
I think, Fred, on Pardo, I think the attic spaces were separated, the new apartments there, those Pardo and Shatka. I was
Yeah.
looking at the attic space, just, randomly, and I'm pretty sure they had, a plywood up between each units and all that.
he told me they were doing that.
Yeah. So he did do that. So as I was driving by.
He had
so,
some intention of selling those units at some time.
yeah.
Yeah, the
And he couldn't
potential.
do that if he hadn't put that fire separation in, and it would be pretty hard to do it afterwards.
Sure. Okay.
Oh, is that right?
Even if we increase the height of the building, it's still going to be dictated by lot size for parking and everything else. anyways.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that is going to be a very key aspect. Right now, the 2 parking spaces per dwelling plus guest, it's a very old standard.
We're going to have to look at reduction.
We're going to have to look at that.
Like 2 parking spaces, period.
Or 1.5 per 2-bedroom and 1 parking space if it's a single, or, a lot of communities modify that. And because that's based on data and studies.
Just to make it easier to
Accommodate.
sell the plan.
Well, the amount of land necessary to be dedicated to the parking for the apartments, because that's part of it. It's not just the density and the height, it's then because we don't have maximum, we don't have, we have to deal with, the property owners have to deal with accommodating not just the level of apartments, but then the amount of parking that has to fit on
Yeah.
that same amount of land, so.
But we have to consider that almost everybody's a 2-car family now.
Yes.
But the developers have to think about how they build, whatever they build, they have to be able to lease. So that should the city dictate that or not? I just went to a housing session, actually, and in Grand Rapids, they, in 2 zoning districts, eliminated setbacks, parking requirements, and allow for up to 4 units in single families. And it's shocking how many houses are being built and rebuilt. It's amazing.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I took some pictures if you're interested to see what a fourplex looks like. There's like an Italian age structure, an American Gothic Victorian, and then this brand new 4-unit, all in the same block, all functioning almost in harmony. You can't, you look at it, it's like, well, okay, it looks okay to me. So just amazing. Again, looking for housing in unexpected places and thinking outside the box maybe got them there. So.
The governor of Texas, Abbott, he saw the prices rising all across the country. I think it's the American Association of Realtors, if that's the right term. They say there's 5.2 million houses we're short right now. And if they were to exist, the price of housing would go down based upon that. Austin has proved that to be true because the governor looked at how fast Austin was growing and the prices were going off the charts. And he encouraged developers by showing them the data, how fast it's growing, what land is available, the price comparable to surrounding areas. And he got a whole bunch of developers to come in and put a lot of housing units in there, both rental and for sale. And for 2 years in a row now, their housing stock, the price has gone down 4% last year and this year thus far.
I know they're building a lot of houses, but they probably got a lot of vacant land too.
Yeah, well, it's a difference, but it shows by providing more, it'll help reduce the price, and it could potentially make us more competitive than the surrounding cities, which would fill those units up and increase our population density.
Yes, and with density, density is an affordability factor. If you could put 4 units on where you used to be able to build 1 or 2, you're saving money and it's making the unit more affordable.
And it's going to attract developers that know they can make a higher profit in doing
And they
so.
would be willing to invest a little more per property than if they couldn't do that.
Yes.
Because they know when they develop the units and they're a little bit smaller, but then what they do then is they increase the finishes. They increase it so it's like a higher, like they still invest it so they can get that rent that they want.
Yeah.
And it's a higher quality. And then you have a renter that's living in a modern apartment, that's a modern unit, that's confidentially is just up to date, modern, it has the latest and greatest of every kind of housing and improvement compared to the other housing.
And we need to look at, like, we just had a gentleman in front of us at Arcola and Cherry Hill,
Yeah.
the apartment. He wanted to do 8 units. Why'd we stick him to 7? Over parking.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
we decreased our density.
Right.
yeah.
So like we have an option to look at the
Well,
parking.
because that's what our code requires.
Current, yeah, current, which is where they're saying, I agree, I think we might need to amend it. I think it needs to be, if we want to increase density, we might have to make other sacrifices.
One of
Population.
the things the neighbors all complain about, though, when an apartment building's going in their neighborhood, is are these people going to park all over the street? And if we don't have parking for them, that's where they're going to be.
Those are the same people that have 3 grown children and they have 7
Yeah, they've got
cars.
7 cars, right.
But in the same aspect, this is the same thing where we tried to amend the parking, to
Right.
be able to park in front of your house, and
Right.
we just got
But
shut.
that's a perfect example. That is a very good point. So like maybe there's other ways that the zoning reform that will come out of this also has to look at that. Like where can we accommodate that additional parking for single-family homes? Because it's just the reality of the situation. So we do have to have those options, not keep certain things sacrosanct anymore.
We ran into that on Pardo and Shatka there.
Yeah.
The guy's got more parking than he knows what to do with, actually, on both sides of the alley there, so.
Yep.
If our ordinance was different, I think he could have very easily, we could have accommodated 10 there, which was his original, rather than the drop down to 8.
Yeah, but it wasn't
But the
different.
scare
no.
about parking was, that's what all the neighbors protested against, and that's what city council reacted to. But I don't think it was brought out clearly that he owns all that parking on the other side of the alley there. And he's got, what, 12 units?
No, less than that.
Oh, yeah.
10 units or
There's
12?
6.
Want to say 7 or 8, maybe?
Maybe it's 8, 4 on each side.
6, 9.
Is it
6
9
on the
total?
top and 3 on the bottom.
He's got way
There's 6
more
upstairs.
than, he's got way more than
Yeah.
parking than what he needs for that,
Yep.
just on the other side of the alley. So if we had that flexibility in the ordinance for greater density, I think he could have put 10 there very easily and accommodated parking.
The city's population in 1990 was 32,045. In 2000 was 30,043. 2010, 27,500. In 2020, 26,400. That's where we're at.
That'd be more.
I'm sorry, 26,800.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at, 26,800. It's been going down.
Well, yeah, we need some new configurations, I think, for some of the bigger parcels, so we can take care of parking and maybe squeeze some more units in.
And so we don't lose some of the older population that doesn't want to deal with maintenance and all the other things associated with the
Yeah,
house.
no, rentals or
Maybe we
condominiums,
can-
I think condominiums would probably be attractive to a lot of older people.
I do too.
Yep.
They don't want to have to cut the grass or shovel the snow.
They can still own a
And
home.
we know 3
but
couples that have
not
left
shovels.
within the last
Still own
couple of
it, you
years.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the member meeting, please come back with some of your goals, the goals you'd like us to see. And we'll
Okay.
go over that.
And we will send out an invitation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for the charrette, so that early time.
Together a list of our vacant properties and what
That-
the existing zoning is.
That'll be part of the analysis in terms of identifying redevelopment sites, vacant properties, these other key redevelopment sites we're focusing on, but a list of all the vacant. And then, yeah.
And we are oops, sorry.
The approximate size of them
Yep.
by acreage.
We are working on a commercial property vacants, available property list. So we're moving along, so
Yeah.
that's one of our items, just so you know that it's coming.
Is it going to be on
Well,
Line Boss?
Kmart would be on that list too.
Kmart, yeah, for
Right,
sure, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
working to
well-
make it online.
Yeah.
So
It'll be
it's gonna
online, yeah,
online.
it's going to be online, yes.
Just as a curiosity, it doesn't have to stay that way, of course, but the Kmart property is currently all C3?
CBD,
CBD.
Central Business.
It's Central Business District.
Okay.
Okay, well, are we done with the master plan discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is Commissioners' comments regarding planning and zoning matters. Mr. Board? Mr. Steenberg?
Do we have any new prospects on the horizon? I always ask the same question to see what might be coming down the pipe.
There's always prospects and people speak about different things, and sometimes we get close, and sometimes we even get approval, and then sometimes they fall off. An example of that would be Carvana. The Carvana project unfortunately has no longer moving forward, just because I think it has something to do with issues they're having with the state in their state law, and
You mean like turning back odometers?
there you go. That's a possibility, so it's probably.
Minor issue.
So it's probably all for the best. But then also Metropolitan, the redevelopment is moving forward slowly but surely. They have presented the building department with an aspect to take that Metropolitan building and divide it into A through H. What is that? 9 different units. Some 3 commercial and the rest industrial behind the rezoning we've just done. They're going to be doing improvements, providing sanitary sewer line and water lines so that each one can be independently serviced. So each one will be set up for independent leasing to individual uses. So that's it.
Okay. Kelly?
No, I'm good tonight.
Matt, did you have anything else?
No, nothing this evening.
No, nothing else.
Okay. Our next regular Planning Commission meeting is Thursday, November 14th, 2024, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
And Matt,